And this is James Allen Rose, like I said, and it's June the 1st, 2010. And I'm glad to have you here, James. It's wonderful to see you. We're going to talk about your life, early life, here on Harkers Island, and how you got involved in music and some of your favorite stories, because, you know, you can tell a story, can't you?
Well, yeah, I've been known for that, you know, in the past. But I've tracked a lot of our history right on. It goes way back in France, 900 AD, and then on up to the present. But personally, my personal life now is a little different, of course. But I started when I was 10 years old, carving out little baby miniature boats. I whittled them out, and once in a while I'd take one to school, and we traded then, because during World War II, no one had any money. All of the money went for bombs and planes and whatever. So we did a lot of barter, you know, and we traded those little boats for pocket knives, flashlights, and whatever was going. And it grew from that now. This is 65 years ago, since I was 10, of course. And that's when I started carving on the little miniature boats.
Let's go back to tell us about your dad. What did he do for a living?
Well, my dad, he was, to start out with, he went to school up to the old schoolhouse here. And in 1929, he joined the Coast Guard, and he became stationed up on Long Island. And there where he met my mom, and they sort of palled around and finally got married. And my dad brought his new bride down to meet the family. And of course, a little after that, I came along, and but I was born in the Hamptons on Long Island. I was born in the old brick Southampton Hospital, January the 5th, 1935. And when I was 6 weeks old, I was very little. Mom brought me to Harkers Island for the first trip, and I've been here ever since. I've been right here because this is where my dad is from. He was born actually right up the road here. And this was his territory, so to speak. And I've called this home the whole time. Now I've got a trainload of cousins and whatever up on the island, which I love every one of them. But I hardly ever get a chance to communicate with them because they're all so busy.
Well, tell us about your grandfather. I mean, things are so different today. When he was courting your grandmama. I
got you, Connie. Yeah. Well, I find some interest in that, you know. Now, Granddad in 1896, when he was 17 years old, he saw a little blonde, curly-haired lady over here to Marshallburg. Well, see, now, Granddad was born and raised on Atlantic. So at this time, he met this little girl over in Marshallburg, and he said, I'll go down on the weekend. He had his Corsair flat bottom round stern inverted rake stem Sharpie.
That's a mouthful.
It's a long handle.
So it's a sailboat.
Handle of all the rest. Mm-hmm. So he takes his Sharpie and he comes on down to Marshallburg, where he spends part of the weekend. And they go out sailing, you know, cruising on his yacht. Sharpie of that time, it's not a yacht, you know. But they finally got married 3 years later in 1899. And their first child was born on my birthday, January the 5th, 1900. That was my uncle, Telford. He was the oldest one of them.
Now, 1899 had special meaning to people who lived on the banks. That's when they had that big storm, the storm of San Siriaco. Even before hurricanes had names.
1889, we had a visitor here from down in the islands. And he named the storm San Ciriaco. He was of Spanish descent. He wrote a book on that. I've been my whole life trying to find a copy of that book, but it does not exist in our area.
Well, now, tell me about, now your father was in the Coast Guard. Did you ever serve in the Coast Guard?
No, I was real shrewd, you know.
There's some water down there for you if you need to drink water.
Fine. Now, later on, I tried to join the Coast Guard. And it so happened one of my graduating classmates was a recruiting officer. And he had to go strictly by the book. I was married and had two on the way, or one on the way and one with them.
So you already had a child and one on the way, and they didn't take it because you had children?
Right, with a family.
Huh.
They wouldn't accept me there. So I've done commercial fishing and boat building. I built
Did anybody teach you how to build a boat?
well, we came from a long line of what they call themselves wood butchers.
Wood butchers?
That sounds somewhat crude, you know. They did real nice work, very good work, and they built a great number of boats, especially Earl and James on that side of the family.
Earl and James Rose.
Right, that's on the Rose side, and they go back a good way because my great uncle, Tillman Rose, is their grandfather, you know, Earl and James, his grandfather. So we're all family, we're all cousins, although we always felt closer than what we actually were.
But you never had plans. I mean, so you just watched them build boats? Is that how you learned?
Yeah, I had several occasions working with James and Earl. Earl chiefly because he was the master craftsman of the whole family. And we exchanged our ideas. And one would come up, an idea would come up, a question, and I'd ask Earl, he says, well, now it's like this. And he explained it in clear detail what had to be done. I just stored that away, you know. When I was 16 and 17, I was doing some cabinetry inside of the cruisers and the boats that they were building. At that time, I was installing bulkheads and then some of the cabinetry in there, you know, bunks and all that. 16 and 17, as I remember. But we didn't have any disc sanders at that time, and we had to stand on the outside with a wooden block and sandpaper on the end of a stick. Stand on the ground and sand the sides of those boats by hand. And my arms were about swollen to about this big then, you know, so my arm would almost fall off trying to do that work, you know.
But there were no plans?
No plans. Earl, it agitated him if anybody bought any blueprints. He said, that's against my plan, you know, altogether. Well, he claimed he could use his skill more so if he wasn't following in someone else's plans, you know. So, and I caught on to that. And I started building them. I was 17 when I built my first 14-foot strip runabout. But that's why my hair is so thin now. Trying to get it to work out. But I was going to do it regardless. And it all started from that on the full-size boats. Now I've got somewhere between 75 and 80 full-size boats, from skids on up to 40-foot cruisers, to my credit, and they're all up and down the east seaboard. Once in a long while, I'll see one of my work come by.
That must give you a real feeling of satisfaction.
It takes you clear back. You know. But
did you have people working with you when you built a 40-foot boat like that?
Well, I've got 3 sons, 3 boys, and the 2 older ones, they worked diligently with me, you know, especially on the harder parts and whatever. And where I really needed help, they were there. But I've been out as late as 11 and 12 o'clock at night, probably upsetting the neighborhood, trying to get caught up on the man's boat, because I told him it would be probably completed at roughly a certain date. And that was moving up pretty close, so I really had to buckle down. And we had to work.
Now, I know everybody's looking at these guitars and they want to know, when did you start, and how did you get your first guitar?
Connie, Mom used to get a little catalog from Lancaster County Seed Company in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And they had all sorts of flower seeds and vegetable seeds and different little items for sale and whatever. But on this one particular catalog, they had, on the back of it, they had a picture of a beginner's guitar. And the offer was, if I would sell $4 worth of seeds and add $4, I could receive that very fine beginner's guitar. Well, I mean, according to them, you know, it was a cheap guitar, very cheap. But I was so happy. I rode an old rusty bicycle all over Harkers Island until I sold $4 worth of seed at 5 cents a pack. And Mom said, "You've done very well." Said, "I'm going to put the $4 to it if I starve to death." So she did, and sent off. Now the post office was down on the shore then, and the post office dock was off from that. You could walk right straight out the front door of the post office, right out on the dock, and out on the end where the pet mail boat was tied up.
Now the pet, that was the name of the boat.
The pet was the name of Captain Kelly Willis's commercial boat, but he built a little cabin on the after section for passengers to ride to and from Beaufort. I've been a couple trips on the old pet myself. And when...
Can you describe just where that is on the island today? Is everybody from here, Harkers Island?
Well, you know where
is that?
It was Grayson's Motel. Where Grayson's Motel was, it was almost right in the middle of the harbor that's there now. They dug all this out, you know. And the old post office, that was just an old shack, like, you know.
So they would bring the mail and the freight over on the mail boat called the Pet.
That's right.
Come from Beaufort and land at that landing.
Right there on that, to that dock. And there were always a few boys, like you folks, that were playing around in the water and whatever. And they would run up and get on the dock, and Mr. Kelly would throw them a line, and a bunch of boys would pull that boat right on up to the dock, so he could unload the mail bags and that sort of thing.
And so that guitar came on that mail boat?
Yeah, but it took 3 or 4 weeks, and after school, I wouldn't ride the bus, so I could go down and come home along the shoreway, just to check, see if my guitar was there yet. And I must have worried Mr. Floyd to death, because he said, "No, I don't see it today." And so I wait a couple of days, and I'd go back down and on the way home. And I said, "Mr. Floyd, is there a package in there for me?" He said, finally, he said, "Yeah, here's something right here," you know. And he brought it out. It was a cardboard box, so long. And I half ran home, clear from up there home. And we laid it on the table, and me and Mom opened the box and said, "Here's your guitar," she said. And I went to work, put the strings on it and everything, but I didn't know what to do with the thing. You know, it's brand new here now. This is something different. And I took it over to Uncle Skeet, or Cletus, and said, "Oh, you got you a new guitar, good for you," you know. So he tuned it right away. You know, he pre-stretched the strings and guitar on it, right on it. And he said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll draw you a diagram where to put your fingers on the chords." So he takes a piece of...
He would show you how to put your fingers
on
the string.
On each chord, you know. He drew that out on a sheet of paper. He put the position dots exactly where they went. He said, "Now I want you to take this home and you practice putting your finger on those dots." And I took it home and I tried it. And something was working on my mind. Maybe I could hum with that. I started humming along with it. After a little while, my mom said, "Buddy," says, "maybe you should take that out on the outside." I was getting on her nerves for sure. So I go out walking around the yard and do. And that's where it all started, you know.
Now you said one of your first songs that you learned was "Down in the Valley."
Yeah.
Can you play a little bit of that? You think?
I can try, honey.
Okay.
But since Tom passed away, you know, these guitars have been stored away. And it seems like the distance from here to there getting greater every day, getting farther away, you know.
And we didn't tune our guitars before we started. How hit me a E string and let me hear. This is what they call the ancient Chinese art of tuning. Okay, what's that? That one right there. It's not bad. Okay. Let's hear your G chord. Let's see. Well, that's not bad. That's not bad. Well,
I tuned it standard last night. Al was there. He had another tuner that it went crazy. And every time I turned the key, the thing just went, it's malfunctioning. But I had my old tuner there, and I said, "I'll use this one, you know." And this is what I came up with. She's pretty close.
Try playing "Down in the Valley." Do you all know this song?
Far away on the phone.
Yeah, no, that sounded good. That sounded good. And so there was a lot of musicians here on Harkers Island, down east North Carolina, wasn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of talent even today. I mean, a tremendous amount of talent all over the Carter County, as far as that goes. I have a number of friends that are, well, some of them are far ahead of me, but it's the newer type music, and see, I'm not acquainted with anything new because I came from another time and another planet and whatever.
You don't do a lot of rap, is that what
No,
you're saying?
I don't
You
do
just
it.
talk.
I
but
don't
you
do any rap or anything
or
new.
Metallica or anything like that. Well, let's talk about one of the most famous musicians on this island that really gained recognition, nationally, because it was told that there was a wonderful folk singer, fiddler on Harkers Island named Ivy Scott. And Miss Jean Ritchie, who is a famous folklorist, sought him out. This is a picture of Mr. Ivy with Miss Jean Ritchie, and they are actually doing a recording, kind of like what we're doing today. And he played fiddle tunes for her. He played a famous song that he wrote about here on Harkers Island about a ship that threw over its cargo, and the people that found the cargo, they got rich selling it to other people. And it became a famous song, and when he was a fisherman too, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
And so when Mr. Ivy went fishing, if they went up to Ocracoke and they got what they call sot in, if the fog came and they couldn't go out fishing, he would bring his fiddle into the store around the stove, and he would sing this song. And it's called the Boujat. And we're not going to sing it today, but it was written to the tune of The Sidewalks of New York. And so he made that a famous song, and that song today is up in the archives in Washington, D.C. And hopefully one day the museum here is going to have a CD of that recording, where they were actually recording this, and they'll have that for sale here.
Connie, I had a cassette tape of Ivy there in my collection, and it disappeared. Somebody liked it as well as I did, and it just disappeared. I can't find it. I was going to maybe make a copy for the museum, but I couldn't find it, and it has upset me.
Oh well, we'll talk.
But Connie, when I was going to school, like these people right here, going to school, being they were members of the family and whatever, I'd go over and visit Tom's mom, Thomas and Sue, which Sue is Ivy's sister. Sue was Ivy's sister. Ivy lived down on the shore, and Sue lived out next to the highway. I would go over and spend a few minutes with Miss Sue, and then I'd walk down to the landing to go see how Ivy and Miss Bessie were doing. And I'd go down, and every time I walk in the door, Miss Bessie would just, she was a big woman. She'd pick me right up off the floor, hug me, and I thought the world of her,
So
and one time, one of those visits, I was there, and Ivy was just sort of half conked out on a we called it a day bed then. And I said, Captain Ivy, would you play a Boujat for me one time? He said, I don't know, man. I got to get a little rest here. But I got him thinking, I said, I really want you to play for me. And he said, Bessie, go get me that fiddle. So she goes in the back room there and brings his fiddle out. And he's there, do 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 do. He get you tuned or whatever. And sure enough, he played it for me that one particular time. Now I've heard him in different places. He was playing because he had some other visitors or whatever, like that. I've heard him maybe 3 or 4 times.
They had square dances.
Well, now
dances.
Tommy, Tommy Gray, my buddy, and he's my third cousin, of course. He's Miss Sue's son, so it would make him my third cousin. Now me and my great-granddad, or my great-granddad and Tommy's great-granddad is the same man, okay? So like I said before, we were all family. But when Tom was 15, he would go to Cape Lookout with Ivy and play rhythm for Ivy to play the fiddle for square dances at Cape Lookout. A lady by the name of Miss Reynolds had a store and a dance hall over in Cape Lookout. That was for the villagers there, you know. See, Cape Lookout used to be a community, you know. My granddad stayed over for a short period of time and had a little general merchandise store, maybe no bigger than this. And every Saturday evening, they would get all fixed up for a square dance. And Ivy would take an old boat, him and Tommy Gray, and go to Cape Lookout and play. He'd wait in the night. And Tom says sometime before daylight, they would get back home, entertaining those folks, and they had big square dances over there.
And you were real privileged to hear Ivy Scott himself play the boojah.
Yeah.
So let's play the boojah, the tune for them.
Yeah, I talked with Ivy a lot of times.
What key do you play?
You know, he had a certain character, but he was kind-hearted, very kind-hearted, and he talked with you, you know. Let's try G.
That was excellent. I'm going to turn the tape over now.
Well, it might have worked together better that way.
It might have worked better that way. That's true. That's true. And you talked about your granddaddy lived over on the banks. Did y'all have, a camp over on Shackelford, or a place to go on the banks?
Yeah, the commercial fishing camp. Yeah, my first trip to Cape Lookout, my dad, I told him I remembered part of it. He said, "Buddy, you had to be 5 years old." I said, "Yeah, I was awful little." But I remember Uncle Edwin was a cook, and he cleaned up the camp, and he cooked for them. They would be down tending their nets and whatever, hauling and whatever. It came time for grub, so they all came into camp. And Uncle Edwin had the meal all fixed. He had several of these old-timey large stand lids, was so big around, and he'd have 3 to 4 of those full of biscuits, cooked for them. Had an old iron cook stove about so big there, and I played around the camp, my dad took a piece of balsa wood out of an old life preserver, and he whittled me out a little boat, and he drove a nail in it and a string on it. Now under the camp was built up so high on piling, and when the tide was real high, the water would collect under that camp. He said there had to be close to 1 million little footprints about this big all around the edge of that water, where I had pulled that boat all day. I was 5 years old at my first trip to Cape Lookout.
Wow.
It wasn't very big, but I can remember there's one other little thing. See, the portholes in the side of the cabin are thick-neck portholes, and I stand up on the locker. I remember that and look at the beach hills, the sand dunes from the cabin before we even got to anchor, you know. And I couldn't wait to get up there in that soft sand, playing and running around in that soft sand, up and down the hills.
Well, what kind of games? You had your model boat. What kind of games did you play? Were there other kids over there that you could play?
Not at that time, Connie. They thought it was something unusual for Dad to bring me over there to start with, you know.
But little girls would sometimes make a tea set out of the seashells.
Well, now my sister next to me, she's gone now, but when she was very little, that was part of my job to look out for my little sister, you know. And Mom would set her out back in the yard and give her old boilers and tin cans or whatever it was. And she would wet that sand and make little sand cakes, you know, on that board down there. And she enjoyed that so much. She was about this high, you know, and she was very content there, and it was almost like a babysitter, you know, for Mom. And Mom had so many, had duties to perform. But I had to kind of keep watch on her, not let her go on the highway and all this. You know.
Now, there wasn't a real highway on the banks.
No, not on the banks. This was at home here.
Oh, okay. You were watching her.
And not let her go out on the road, which was...
I thought we were still on...
tar and pebbles, you know. And once in a while, really, there'd be a truck or a car would go by. But the rest of those gals in the neighborhood, they played a lot of hopscotch at that time. And so they would draw out to the squares on the road and play for 2 or 3 hours. Didn't have to worry about any cars or anything. And they were out there hopping around, looked like a bunch of rabbits, you know. And we'd go out and tease them sometime. Of course, we had our other things to do. But a big part of the time I was building, I was either whittling on a little boat or building magazine racks. When I was 12, I made some little magazine racks. And my grandma, she hadn't had one. I made one for Mama. As soon as they saw it, the rest of the ladies in the neighborhood had to have a magazine rack. And after making half a dozen or more of them, I said, something's got to give. Of course, this is not my thing, magazine rack. I said, my thing is boats, you know, and model airplanes. During World War II, I made a number of small model airplanes with 12-foot wingspan on it, and I put them on a pedestal. And I had Mom's stairs clear from the top down there for a spell, you know, of model airplanes, fighter planes, and whatever. And my dad had a lot of friends coming in every so often, and when they would come and they'd leave, they'd take at least 1 or 2 of those little plane models. Well, now, if they've got...
Was it okay with you? I mean, did you say something?
Yeah. It was all right, you know. I said, well, it made them happy and whatever, you know. Of course, I love them, the little planes, but I got $2 a piece.
Oh, you're selling them.
$2 a piece, you know, and sell 2 of them. That's outstanding. So I was pleased either way, you know.
Well, now the Rose family is not only musical, and good storytellers and good boat builders, but you were part of the whaling community out on Shackelford, your family, right?
Well, yeah, they took part in it, and over in Cape Lookout Village, they had this little cabin built way out of the way of the house, the home. And it was stored with black powder and kegs of powder, and that was the most important thing right there.
That was actually in the Cape Lookout Village area?
That's
or on
right in, almost in town, if you like to call it that.
Yeah.
Wasn't much of a town, I don't suppose. But that's where they stored their lances and harpoons, and all the equipment was stored in that little cabin. But the black powder, that powder was the most important thing, because you mustn't light a match or anything around there, because you all go up.
Wait, you have to realize that this was called shore whaling, because they would put somebody on a lookout on a high hill or high dune.
Exactly, and watch for the whale.
And watch for the whales, as you know, when they would come up and they'd blow, they'd spout, you could see the column of water where they're breathing.
Yeah.
And at the time, hunting whales was, there was no kerosene. They had to have the natural oil from the whales to light the lanterns, and the sperm whales, which were not caught out at Cape Lookout, they made candles. They had such fine oil.
It was one of the finest oil came from the sperm whale.
Right, and we call it the right whale, which was called the right whale because it was the right whale to catch.
The right one.
And they would go out in a little boat and shoot them with a bomb lance or throw a harpoon in them, bring them to shore, and then cut them up and cook them. Like when your mama fries chicken, how the grease pops, from the skin and everything. Well, it's called, and what they have left after they heat that blubber is what they have is called cracklings. Mm-hmm. And it's like if you eat, anybody eat fried pork skins?
Connie.
That's what they are, and they would throw them in the fire to keep the fire going.
Connie, they had big cast iron pots, all about 3.5 foot in diameter. They'd throw that blubber in there and try it like lard, like you would lard. And I saw the rusty places. That was all that was left to a couple of those old horn pots where they tried that blubber, to get the oil from it. Now the captain, see, each family, the oldest member, he was the head of his family, which God arranged all this, and he'd be in charge of the crew. And they would name that particular whale after his last name. But it would be Captain so-and-so, Lewis, Guthrie, whatever name would be applied to that particular whale that was caught at a certain time. But they'd bring it in on an extremely high tide, right on the top high water, and let the whale ebb out. And when the tide left it, they go hard to work. Strip the blubber, cut it in chunks, drag it on up, and put it in those pots that were already going,
And this would take a week or so because these animals were so large.
That's right.
And they said it was a real smelly affair. You got a big carcass like that up on the beach, cutting it up, and so it was smelly, hard work.
Yeah.
And just like Mr. James Allen was talking about, they would name the whales.
Mm-hmm.
And by the captain's name, but also the Mayflower whale was caught in May, so they named it the Mayflower whale. And that skeleton of that whale is hanging in the museum, in the Natural Science Museum in Raleigh to this day.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
In one of my visits, I saw it. It's amazing how to restore and to keep history. We should never forget our history. It's important. If we don't know where we came from, we might not know where we're going.
And
So
some of you boys and girls out there, were probably the same age. There weren't any adults in the village, and there was a whale coming. They spotted a whale. And so the children got in the boats and went after this whale, caught it, and brought it in. And they called that the little children's whale.
That's right.
I'll tell you, they were brave boys and girls, weren't they?
Well, they were about half-grown boys, you know. They had seen what was going on, so they figured they could do it too, you know. But it's awful risky, you know, around the whale because he's in his natural habitat. And he has a very powerful thing. His tail can just cut a whaleboat right in two with one swipe, or at least bust it up. And it makes it real dangerous. It's a dangerous operation.
My grandfather was from Stacy, North Carolina, and he was down here fishing. And Joe Rose, some of James Allen's kin,
Tom's uncle.
They were short a man, and they asked my grandfather to fill in the boat, you know, because everybody had to row to go after the whale. They had a station, you know, they had to sit at and row. And this one particular whale got the boat, like James said, and hit it with their tail and smashed it. It broke Joe Rose's leg, and everybody was in the water, but they finally caught the whale and brought it ashore. But when everything was said and done and Mr. Rose was healing up, he carved for my granddaddy a net needle made out of the bone, whale bone, and gave it to him as a present to say thanks for being there for us when we needed you. And I have that today. I don't have it with me today, but I've still got it.
Well, that's
got it in a nice box. One day it'll be at this museum.
Yeah, with some things like that, they're lost through history, you know, they get misplaced. But if you got that, it's a special item.
Yes, it is. Very special. Well, I want us to take a break. They've been so good. We're going to cut this off. They did a good job getting all that energy out, didn't they, James Allen?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good job.
You just look at them, you wouldn't think they were that energetic.
Tell me what a great meal would be that just took you, that if you were at home, what's the best meal you could have? What do you long for?
Oh, there's so many of them, you know.
But just tell me a couple of them.
But anyway, you could take some sided off sea mullet.
Sided off sea mullet. Now, is that filleted? Is that how you say
filleted? Yeah.
Oh, I got you. Sided off.
And then you just salt and pepper them, and let it rest for an hour. Let the salt strike in for an hour. Some people think you're going to pickle them, but it's not like that. But it flavors the meat, you know. Now, you fry them to a golden brown, and then you slice a big red ripe tomato in half-inch slices. Would be a good slice. And make some special slaw to go with that. And if the person can't eat that, he's already died. That's one of the best things I like, anyway.
Oh, that's great.
And but now you have to put the right ingredients in the slaw, otherwise it's cabbage.
It's cabbage?
Now you've got to change it from cabbage to improve the taste on it, otherwise, you know.
What would you drink?
With a pinch of vinegar, apple cider vinegar, salt and pepper, mayo anyway, mayonnaise, and horseradish sauce. Stir it real good and get it all stirred up good together. You might want to add a little horseradish sauce or another little touch of vinegar. And you've got real slaw to go with the flavor of that fried beef, you know, and that tomato together.
How about cornbread? Did you eat any cornbread?
Well, if you're going to fry cornbread, you just put enough flour in it to stick the meal together. If you put too much flour in it, see, flour is bitter. But if you just put enough flour in it to stick the meal, wet it and keep stirring it, and have it quite wet when you place it in the skillet, soon as you pour it in the skillet, take your spatula and spread it as big as it'll make. When it fries all out, it'll have lace around the edge of it, crispy lace, and it's real flavorful now.
Mm. Now, what would you wash that down with?
Oh, well, I like iced tea, you know, just plain iced tea. But
what was some of the old timers?
But you know, Connie, I can't have any sugar whatsoever. And I use Splenda. I use a lot of Splenda. I don't know, maybe that's killing me too, you know, but it works okay, but nothing like pure sugar, the taste, you know. And I manage quite well with it, though.
Well, some of the old timers now used to take yopon leaves.
Yeah.
And didn't your grandmama used to do that?
Yeah, my grandma said, now go out and I want you to cut me some yopon, but don't bring me the ones with the berries on it, the red berries. And we can't use that. I look all around out back there, you know, and there's one. I'd bring her 4 or 5 branches, and she would take the leaves off and put it in a shallow pan and put it in that old oven and just let it lay there until it started turning a little bit brown. And she'd keep watching on it. When it turned just before black, she'd take it out, and then she would put it in a pot and add the hot water, add the boiling water to it. And it's almost like coffee. What comes from those baked leaves is amazing. And
it looks a lot like tea.
But you know, some of the older ones, they put nothing in it. And they drank it straight. But that's a stainless steel stomach. We're moved away from the cast iron, you know.
Well, and it has a lot of caffeine in it, and it's also a green tea, which everybody talks about how, you know, the antioxidants in green tea is better for you.
I said, Grandma.
And that tea was good for you.
How does anybody drink that? And she said, I don't know. You get used to anything after a while. I said, well, no, I believe I could put a little bit of sugar and a little bit of pet milk in that, and it might be all right. And I did. I made a right good tasting drink out of yopon tea, which that is a real dose. My Uncle Talbot used to say if it was something he had for dinner or something he didn't like to drink, he said, they said, how did you like your meal? And he said, well, I've got to admit that was a real good dose. But they always call it dose, you know.
A real good dose.
If he didn't like it.
It was like,
I have to.
So he was saying it was like taking a dose of medicine.
Yeah.
That he didn't have to do again.
He was funny like that, you know. He was real rough.
I bet you these children.
But he was fun, you know. Some of the old tales he told were somewhat funny.
They would love to hear what Christmas was like for you as a boy growing up here on the island.
Well, like I said there, you know, at the close of World War II, there were 8 to 10 years recovery period where they were trying to get things back to half normal, like. And funds were real low. Nobody had any money. But Mom always planned ahead, way ahead. And if she had just a few dollars, she'd make the best of it. And she bought a lot of fruit and nuts and that sort of thing. Now, I had hung my stocking up. And when I got up next morning, there'd be an apple or an orange in there. 2 or 3 English walnuts and a pecan or 2. That was my stocking. But if I saw something in the Sears Roebuck catalog, I had to work and make all I could to give her towards some toy or something, you know. And it did work out.
Oh, that's good.
But there was no extra money anywhere that I know of, you know. Things were real slow.
Did you go hunting in the at all? Were you a hunter?
Well, not much of a hunter, but when I was 13, one of those Christmases, Mom, I said, Ma, you know, I'd love to have that 22 rifle. That was a dream, I thought. Well, she said, I don't know about that, you know, that's a lot of money, $18. That's a lot of money, I don't know about this. I wouldn't get my hopes up. So I partly forgot about it, you know. But come that Christmas morning, I looked out in the corner and there stood a bolt action 22 rifle and 2 boxes of bullets down. Well, it really happened anyway, you know. But I'd go out in the woods over here to the bay and over here to the willow pond and all around there. I knew all the old Indian trails. See, the Indians left the trails here through the woods, and it was hollowed out where they had made so many trips through the old trails. See, and I learned those the hard way because several occasions I would be in the thicket, and now how do I get out of here? So I look at the sky and try to get a course set, and I would just actually tire through the woods until I came out. And I said, now, I was headed southwest, and I don't want to get back in that area again, you know. So when all the time, just a little farther over, was the old east and west Indian trail that came clear down to the willow pond, and it went on out back of the Davises and right on, you know, out back of Grandma's house. So it was one of the main trails.
Well, we're going to have to get a map of the island, and I want you to draw that for me later on, if you would. That'd be great.
I'll give it a try, Connie. But you know, at that time, there was no real, you know, sincere law on shooting birds. And the robin was very tasty. Now, I'm admitting to a lot of stuff here, but the law wasn't all that strict on it, you know. And some of the people depended on it partly for their food. And that sort of kept the law from being strictly enforced.
Well, my mother said during the Depression, if it flew low enough, it could be supper.
Yeah. Well, you know, the old gray gull, that was almost like having a turkey, you know.
Really, a gray
Yeah, my
gull?
grandma now. It's not my time, but used to. They ate the gray gull. It was big, and she said it tasted a little bit like chicken, but you could tell it wasn't chicken.
I got you.
But you had to parboil it, you know, all the feast taste out, and it was meat, though, you know.
Did you ever shoot a loon?
No.
Or did you ever eat loon?
No. Now that was a strict law on that.
Right.
That was under federal law. In fact, I have been awakened a number of mornings to get up to go to school with the hunters on Shackleford Bank. It sounded like an army over there. It sounded like we were being attacked by the Japanese. I got up. There was a good alarm clock in the morning. Get it ready to go to school. And that went on for a while until they got serious about it. And there was a number of copters and federal agents that just stormed Shackleford one particular morning. There were a number of tickets written. Some of them, they managed to get out of it. Because if you didn't have a loon anywhere nearby you were just sightseeing, you know.
With a gun. You were sightseeing with a gun?
No, Delma Willis had bought a brand new 12-gauge gun. And he saw the man way up the beach coming towards him. He said, my God, I'm going to be locked up forever. He takes that brand new 12-gauge, sticks her down in the mud, and puts his foot on it and shoves it right on down. And he's standing on the butt plate of that brand new 12-gauge when the man walks up to him. And Delma said, you know what? All this is unnecessary. Told the agent. He said, I can't understand why they want to even shoot these loons. That's not right to kill these birds like this, you know. And the man said, hey, you got a good idea, you got a good point there. He said, but we're gonna have to do something with this. So he said, well, look, you have a good day and whatever, you know. And the agent left and went on walking down. He's still standing there on the butt plate of that 12 gauge, brand new 12 gauge gas operated automatic 12 gauge shotgun. And he stood there until everybody was gone. He stayed right there in the same place looking on, you know, like he was distraught. And this is bad, this is really bad. They're killing all those loons, told the agent. This is the worst thing I've ever seen. And he got away with what he was doing. He just hadn't been in action yet, you know.
But he finally got the gun out.
He got it in, it was bad, you know.
But it's better than going to jail.
Had to take it all down, clean it, you know, like that. Now, brand new, he had just bought it.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today, and I want to thank you out there. I mean, most well-behaved children, except for a couple of sneezes. I would have thought we were by ourselves in here, and I appreciate that so much.
Yeah,
and
you
we want to have a couple of questions on the tape. Does anybody have a question? Anybody want to ask Mr. Allen, James Allen, a question? Yes, sir. Come on up here. Come on up here.
They're so well behaved.
I'm telling you.
It's outstanding, that is. That's very
stand right there on that piece of metal there. And what's your name?
Ethan.
Ethan? What would you like to ask Mr. Rose?
What was your job?
Huh?
What did you do for a job?
A living?
Yeah.
Well, I built boats. I'm a commercial fisherman, boat builder, and I've got about, I don't know, maybe 15 houses to my credit throughout the county. But I did that while I was resting. See, when I finished a boat and I didn't get an order right away, I'd build a house. And then I'd come back and set another fellow's boat up and build him his boat. It was between boats and houses there for a little while, but chiefly boats. I've done more boats than anything else. Now, in 1980, I had built a number of miniature boats, you know, model boats. And I said, I told my wife, I said, honey, I said, I'm gonna go into model boats 100%, and I'll see if it works out. I said, if we start with this, it'll be our business. So I started out with it, and I built a number of pieces. And my oldest son